Hey, welcome to the All Together podcast. My name is Bianca and I am your podcast host. I know as well as anyone that life can be messy when you are following God, figuring out relationships, and learning how to be a healthy adult. I hope this podcast encourages you, makes you laugh, and helps you grow a little closer to Jesus. Oh, I'll be spilling all the tea, so get your cups ready. Hello, and welcome back to the All Together podcast. Here on this podcast, we talk all things. We talk about the messy parts of life. We're really good at talking about relationships, friendships, adulting, hormonal health, and just so much more. And so if you are here for the first time today, welcome to my podcast. My name is Bianca, and I am your host. Today, I am just super excited about this podcast because we're going to be talking about all of life's hard questions. I don't know about you, but I think sometimes when it comes to the difficulties of navigating faith, navigating our own questions, navigating when life doesn't turn out the way we want, it could leave us kind of feeling a little down or feeling like, maybe life is different than what we expected. But I could not think of a better person to bring on today than the one and only Darnell Wilson. Darnell has been in my life for almost 10 years now. He was my college ministry coach at Impact. It's a college ministry that I had at Kent State University. And Darnell also during that time became one of my close mentors in life. He walked me through some crazy life things as I navigated my own life discoveries, as I navigated who I was in the Lord. And then also just figuring out how to be a healthy adult. And so today I brought Darnell on because we're just going to talk about just all the messy parts of life, literally, which is what this podcast is about. So Darnell Wilson, welcome to the All Together podcast.
All right, that's what's up, Bianca. I appreciate it. I almost called you Zarders. Yes, I've known Bianca for a number of years, and I'm excited to be part of this production. I was wondering if I would ever get the invite, but I got it, and I feel so special.
Yeah, you should.
I'm not sure if we're going to talk about hormonal stuff today, so but maybe,
we are not.
Maybe you never know what God may do. So yeah, but I'm happy to be here.
Darnell he's a jack of all trades. He's a pastor. He's a college ministry coach. He actually was a nurse back in the day. Now you just do all sorts of things. I can't even catch up anymore.
Well, right now, I am by vocational. I'm not I stopped being a pastor last July. But
how do you
like
stop being a pastor though?
Well, I stopped.
It's
in
in
official
you.
job, but I'm a shepherd. I shepherd all people who need, wherever people are, wherever they need help, I'm there, but right now I am bivocational. My job, I work as a project manager for a medical software company. That's how I pay the bills. But my real job, my real calling is to shepherd everyone, college kids at Kent State University and also at Case Western, and also just whoever, there's a saying that wherever the curse is found, the curse of sin, it's affected the nouns, people, places, and things. And so this is where I must be. I must be where people, places and things are impacted by the curse of sin and death. And so that's where me and any other believers, we should be there, and we should be helping those people who are infected by death and sin, showing them the cure, which is Christ.
Wow, that was a good spiel, honestly. That was like 10
You
out
ever
of
heard
10.
that before?
No, that was really good.
Yeah. It's an old saying. It's funny. I first heard it some years back, but it says wherever the curse is found, it's affected the nouns, people, places, and things. And so that's why the curse of sin is why we believe that there are so many systems that can be infected by sin, where humans are. Where anything, where people, places, and things are, sin is present, and God has called His people to go into those ugly, messy places, to talk about the goodness of a good God that we have in Christ. So,
That's really good. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think as we dive into this conversation today, we're definitely gonna like get raw and real. So if you
Let's go.
have like a notebook or anything like that, get your phone notes out. Like this conversation is gonna be jam packed.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just gonna dive in. So I would say the first thing I really want to talk about is navigating life's disappointments.
Ooh,
If
ooh, we have a
you
lot of
have
those.
been listening to my podcast over the last couple of months, you know that some of the biggest life disappointments for me is that I literally thought I'd be married and I'd have 4 kids by the time I was 30. I am 28 years old, not married. So that has been something that I've been working on with the Lord. And Darnell has actually helped me work through that through the years as well.
Hmm.
I think when you're 21, 22 years old, you're just like, oh, like I have my entire 20s to live for. But for me, I felt so much disappointment when I didn't have that ring before spring. So Darnell helped me work through that. But
Yeah.
so Darnell, what for you when it comes to life disappointments, like what are different things that you've had to work through in your life, and how have you helped other people work through those things?
Wow, that's a loaded question right there.
Yeah.
That's a lot right there. I think that whenever anyone who's lived on this earth for a number of moments, or a minute or two have had disappointments, whether it's your parents or your the lack of romantic relationships or even career aspirations, all those things, like there's a desire, like I expect this to happen, and then the reality, like this. Wait a minute, adulting 0 out of 10 would not recommend. there's a
Literally.
there's an old saying. There's a saying I saw on the internet. Someone said, adulthood is the worst hood I ever lived in.
I
And so,
cannot.
and so like as I can say, if I want to break it down into categories, I could break it down spiritually, personally, and professionally. Like my biggest disappointments. One of the biggest disappointments I ever experienced was, one of the biggest, it changed the whole trajectory of my life, was when I got kicked out of school. So I was actually, I felt God had called me to go to grad school, and through a series of circumstances, I was overwhelmed with life, and just sometimes you can get so overwhelmed that you can't meet the criteria that the job is calling you to do. Sometimes you can just be so stressed, and like, and I failed. I didn't make it. That's when I learned very early on that a plane that's overloaded cannot fly. Like I was so overwhelmed with life that I couldn't fly with everything that was, there was all the responsibilities on my plate. And I crashed and burned. And then in school, the anticipation of becoming, working as a in my profession, and being the top of this craft, making out that buku bucks, all those things had gone up in smoke like that. At the age of 28, I had to try to figure out, well, what do I do now? I had to pivot again. And I didn't know, it took me a very long time to get my footing under me, because, I don't know. I mean, like sometimes you can put so much of your identity and so much of who you are into what you do.
Yeah.
Like there was a time that yeah, I was all about like my schoolwork. You know what I mean? I'm the nurse. I'm the HNIC, the head nurse in charge. I was the brother. That's not what you've done, example. But anyway, but I was that dude that I thought I was running it. And then, like I had never experienced failure from an academic perspective until I was in my late 20s. And then before I know it, I was like, it ripped away the very fabric of everything I thought that I knew. Like, for example, I didn't realize that I had built my whole identity on my academic accomplishments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like like everything, like when that was, like, you don't know something's an idol, or you don't know if something is you put into God status until it's gone, so it's taken away from you.
Yeah.
And then how you respond when that's happened, then that's when you realize, oh, that played a bigger role in my heart than I would have liked to give it credit for when everything was great.
Hmm.
And so so yeah, man, professionally it was that, and then personally it was my brother passing away. That was a rough one. He passed away coming up on 5 years now. No, 6 years,
Wow, it's been that long.
2018. Yeah, it's been that long. You remember, you were there, you were around that
Hmm.
time. And also, I mean, even the disappointment of being married, not being married, I became a Christian almost 20 years ago, and I'm like, I thought I'd be married. I'm like, I'm, I thought I was the prize. What Simone Biles'
How
husband
old are
say?
you?
I'm
How old
old
are you,
enough.
Darnell? Yeah.
Old enough.
He's
I'm
in
not,
his
I'm
upper
yeah,
30s.
no, yeah, I'm an old brother, but it's one of those things where like you never thought, I never in a million years thought that I'll be single this long. That was
Hmm.
just like, you were like 23, like a rain before spring. You came to college to get your MRS degree. You
Exactly.
came to get it. You were like, I'm in here, to get, and I was just like, I got time because I was that dude that was like, I'm okay with being single, but then after, when the years start going, you're like, wait a minute, what's happening? Something's wrong, And so
Yeah.
I think that was one of the biggest disappointments,
Hmm.
like from a personal, still is. It's one of those things where I'm just like, how do I reconcile that?
Yeah.
Uh, Especially being a man, people think it's weird. They're like, you should, you know, you got options, and I'm like, well, no, not really, but maybe I do. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I want to like camp out a little bit about what you said earlier about just thinking that you were going to end up at a certain place,
yeah.
but then it didn't happen. And I think the same thing for me, freshman year of college, I was convinced I was going to be a nurse. I ended up taking every single test and I was
Yeah.
failing all my exams. I called my dad and I was like, Dad, I think I have a learning disability. And he's
Hmm.
like, you're 18. We would have caught it already. And I just think like that was such a big thing for me because I didn't never consider myself this like failure of a student, but that
Yeah.
felt like real failure. And I think just seeing God's hand too in all of it and just seeing like, okay, how did he pivot the situation that we thought, for both
Yeah.
of our academic careers, like, okay, we thought it would be like this, but then the Lord ended up pivoting exactly what we were doing. And now we're actually walking in very different paths than what we had originally planned.
Heck yeah. I remember
Yeah.
when you switched over to public health.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was a little rough one for you, but you did
Yeah.
it well.
Yeah.
I think
I'm glad I
I think
found it.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest things to that like you can learn how to do is how do you pivot when life throws a curveball at you? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And most times we don't know. We're always looking for a one way, or I'm just looking for the way that God is trying to take me out, or call me to go someplace. And I'm like, well. I don't think it's that simple. I know
Yeah.
as I've gotten older, I begin to realize that there's not, there's only one way, which is Jesus Christ. He's the way, the truth, and the life. But every other thing, as far as our choices, they're just a ways. They're choices
Hmm.
you have, and like ultimately, like do you listen to where God is calling you to go? Like and most times people are like, I don't know where He's calling me. Oh, follow the opportunities. You know what I mean? Because for
Hmm.
you, it was, how'd you end up choosing public health from nursing?
I had a
How'd you switch over?
friend, my friend
Yep.
Honora, she sat me down and was like, hey, I was in pre med, didn't do well. She's like,
Hmm.
you might like this subject instead.
Hmm.
And then she told me all about public health. And I was like, actually, that sounds like exactly what I want to do. So it
Hmm.
was just, yeah, from that community, because she was in impact as well. So it's like,
Yeah.
as another believer came alongside of me and was like, hey, there's options out there. You don't have to feel like you're a failure when there's more that you could do. And that really changed the trajectory of, my career even today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest thing. Like, look, friendships, relationships. God has
Hmm.
blessed you with people around you who
Yep.
can give you wise counsel. Like for me, after I got, when school didn't work out for grad school, I felt like I was lower than worm sperm. I felt like I was the
Yep.
lowest thing on the earth. I was
Worm
low.
sperm.
Yeah, I felt like it was low. I'm like I didn't know what to do, and I couldn't reconcile. Like I couldn't bounce back.
Hmm.
It was my sister who was like, "Hey, Darnell, have you thought about doing, this epic training? Computers, how to do this stuff. Like, hey, it's a good way to, get some resources." And it was an opportunity that I didn't foresee myself getting into IT. I didn't foresee myself even trying to do that, and then before I know it, I switched over. I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. I was scared. It was risky. Typically, like we have a God. I was telling you earlier that we have a God who's wild. And one of the things that he often tried to teach his people is that he wants us to take calculated, but risk nonetheless. He wants to take
Mm-hmm.
risk. If you look at Genesis 12, you see that God called Abram out of his land into to a place where he did not know. Genesis 12:1, and Abraham, God called Abraham to follow him. And he didn't know where he was going, but like he ended up just walking after what God had called him to do, which was to leave his place where he was at, and he moved on to something else. And as he was walking, he didn't know where he was going. He didn't know what was the ultimate end goal. He just knew that
Mm-hmm.
God was with him. And
Yeah.
and I think a lot of times when it comes to pivoting, we struggle. We overthink things so much, and I'm like, dude, take a chance. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
risky. You know what I mean? If it's not risky, then if it's not scary, if it's not something that's going to make your blood turn a little bit, then it's probably not worth doing. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
that's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes God will challenge you to step. God will challenge you to step out on faith because it's going to make you cling to Him more.
Yeah, I mean, I think about Abraham's story where it's like, even though there was no reason to hope, Abraham kept hoping and
Kept hoping.
believing
Yep.
that like God would fulfill his promise, and the same goes
Yeah.
for us. And he like went about his life for 50, 60, 70
Yeah.
years and did what God had told him to originally do. And so
Correct.
I just think that the same goes for us. It's like, if we're not risk takers, if we're not saying, God, I trust you, that you live inside of me, like Christ lives
Yeah.
inside of us. And so if he lives inside of us, he's speaking to us constantly, whether it's through
Yeah.
community, whether it's through the
Through
word,
His
whether
Word.
it's
Yeah.
through spending time with him, like he's constantly speaking. And I really do think he gives us these inklings in our spirit where it's like,
Yeah.
go here, do this. And I think if we're listening and if we're constantly like
Yeah.
around community listening
Yeah.
in, I really do believe that you'll end up on the right path that you should go.
Correct. Yeah. Girl, retweet, retweet, retweet. Primarily, primarily because here's the thing that people mess up is that they don't realize how God has set up the world. God has rigged the world to where it only works for those who takes risk.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're a believer or you're not a believer, if you look at anybody who started a business, it was a risky endeavor. If you look
Yep.
on anyone who changed the world, they changed it because they initially took a risk that they didn't know would pan out or work out in the way that thought it would. And so ultimately, God is challenging His people, whomever you are, wherever you at, to take risk for His
Mm-hmm.
kingdom and for His glory. Because ultimately He's going to take you to a place, and the end goal may not be what you and I think the end goal will be,
Yeah.
but the end goal will always lead you to the point where you're relying on Him, and He'll get the glory, He'll get the honor, He'll get the praise for you walking out on faith. The Bible
Mm-hmm.
tells us this in Hebrews 11. He says that without faith it's impossible to please God.
Yep.
It says that like the economy of heaven works on faith, and we got to take and if you look in the business world, faith. Another word for faith is risk.
Mm-hmm.
Like taking a chance. The only, and I'm telling you people, I tell people all the time, man, if after the thing about me that failed, after I failed with school and it didn't work out, I was like, all right, my sister, and you need to be around community. The scripture tells us that in
Mm-hmm.
the counsel of many, wisdom is found. It tells you the importance of praying and you pray, you get counsel. And then I tell people, this is my recipe. Pray, I get wise counsel with people around me, and then I make a decision, make a
Mm-hmm.
choice, and then, and you'll be shocked at how God will take you on a wild adventure.
And I got to the
Correct.
point. So I just think it's like, yeah, taking that leap of faith to
Yeah.
vision. I'm gonna bring it forth, and I'm gonna take a risk, even if I'm fumbling around and feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because it's like I'm choosing to say, yes, God, I want to serve you in this capacity. Yes, Lord, I actually want to be obedient to what you have said to me.
Girl, amen. So here's what I think. I want to say something that may sound sacrilegious, but I believe it is grounded in truth. Is that I believe that the highest form of praise and worship to God is, yes, it's hallelujah, but I think a more practical form is yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just saying yes, Lord. Meaning that I'm going to trust you even if I don't feel you. I'm going to trust you even if I don't see where you're taking me to. I'm going to trust you even if I don't understand the end goal. I'm just going to say, yes, Lord, I'll follow you. So 5 years ago, okay, cool. You tell me a podcast that don't make no sense. I don't know nothing about no podcast. I don't know nothing about the streaming. You know, like just say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you say yes, like right now, even if it's, people say, delayed obedience is still disobedience. No, but you still say yes. You
Mm-hmm.
still started. And I think that's what brings a smile to God's face is that when his kids say, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think
I mean,
that's important.
I think in saying yes and taking a leap of faith is so important, but how do you grapple with you taking a risk or a leap of faith and then it kind of flops or it kind of just like fizzles out, Like, how do you actually, I don't know, like, how do you interact with God in that way when you're dealing with the disappointment of you thought that it would go this way, but it didn't?
You tell them, you talk
Yeah.
to them,
Mm-hmm.
because ultimately, like that's where like the intimacy and the relationship has to go to is that you're talking to them. You're like saying, God, like like I thought this would turn out like this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where we get messed up is that we think that God owes us something. Like we think God
Yes.
owes us that this should work out like I think it should.
Mm-hmm.
One, here's the thing about God, and here's the thing about Christian faith or whatever, is that a lot of Christians in contemporary culture, they have this view of God that we kind of treat him like he's almost like a cosmic genie. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
definitely. Mm-hmm.
Where or like he has this daisy kind of love, like you love me, you love me not,
Mm-hmm.
or even worse than yet is that if we kind of like try to pimp God out.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is that we try to pimp him out like then, like if I do this, then you must owe me that. So if I go for a week or two without masturbating, then you must bless me with a good grade on my test or whatever. And I'm like, one, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Two, um, I mean, at the end result, and I get how people are because we all have that, we fall into that mindset. But I think that at that point, are you going to God to get stuff from Him,
Yeah.
or are you going to Him just because He's God?
Mm-hmm.
Like so. I think that one of the biggest things that you got to ask yourself is when you're doing anything for the faith, like what's your motivation? What's your purpose behind it? Are you doing it
Mm-hmm.
because you feel like if I do this, then God will owe me that? Because honestly, I mean, the essence of sin is self-centeredness, and the essence of sin is self-centeredness. It's not just breaking God's law, because I think that's what sin leads to is ultimately rebellion and breaking God's law. But the essence of sin is self-centeredness and
Hmm.
trying to control somebody else. Trying to do things to control other people so that they
Yeah.
can do things for you, right? And and we see this laid out when it comes to when we do stuff for God, when we're disappointed, and we look at our
Yeah.
lives and we like, it didn't work out like I wanted to. This
Mm-hmm.
failed. I messed up, and it didn't work out. Like one, God never promised you that it will succeed like you think it should.
Yeah.
One, but here's the thing. The one thing that He did promise you is that He won't leave you nor forsake you.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I had this conversation. I'm like, God never promised you you'll get married.
Literally. Like it
He
does
never
not say that in the
promised.
Bible. Like,
He didn't promise you that. But ultimately, like our obedience to God is not to get God's stuff,
yeah.
but it's just to get God Himself.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that is your inner motivation, even if it is going to heaven, anything that is your motivation, that is you've put that in place of God in your
Hmm.
heart. If your obedience and your love and your consistency with God is fueled by what you want to get from Him in return, then honestly, you're just trying to pimp God out. You're trying to use Him, and
Mm-hmm.
that is the essence and the manifestation of sin in your heart and my heart, and it's there, and we want to use God so that we can get stuff from Him. And I'm like, I was talking last night to
Dang, that's
somebody.
deep.
Yeah. We want to use
That's
God
a
to
word for
get stuff.
somebody.
Yeah. It's a word for
Mm-hmm.
me. It's a word for me
Yeah.
because sometimes I look at this and I'm like, God, I want, like when I look at the scriptures, I'm like, all of us, we're all motivated by something, and it's self-centeredness.
Mm-hmm.
It's self-interest, and it's not, and that's part of our DNA. That's part of the sin nature that we have. But until God comes in and radically reorient your heart and your mind,
Yeah.
through a relationship with Jesus Christ, that's the only time we can actually have the ability to do things just for God.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that is your motivation, even going to church or reading your Bible, if it's other than just to know Him personally and to be intimate with Him and to become conformed to His image, if that's not your inner motivation across the board, even your obedience
Mm-hmm.
even if there's this whole thing of being risk takers that we're talking about, like all that should just simply so that you may know God more.
That's
What
good.
did Paul say? Paul said, "My goal is to know Him."
Yeah.
Like that is the purpose of you coming to faith in Jesus, to know the living God of the universe, and to be conformed into His image and to know Him personally. That's the purpose of this whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
is to know Him intimately. It is not to get His stuff, but it's just to get God.
Yeah.
So if God never gives you anything else, aside from salvation, He's given you more than you could ever want or more than you could ever need.
Mm-hmm.
He is good all by Himself. He's
Yeah.
sufficient. Yeah.
It's so good because I mean I literally was spending time with the Lord yesterday, upset the season that I was in and just pouring out my heart before God. And I really feel like the Lord was like, I'm everything. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you have this or if you don't have that. It doesn't matter if you're hungry or you're not. It doesn't matter. He's everything. So it's
Yeah.
like if I'm desiring anything in life, it's like
Yeah.
that's going to fail me and that's going to fall short. But if
Yeah.
I make Him my everything, give Him, my mind and my heart and my
Yeah.
body, it's like I can't go wrong there because He sustains me, He
Yeah.
fulfills me, He satisfies me, and He's the prize, He's the
Yeah.
treasure.
He
And I
is. Yeah.
think that's something that the Lord has really been working in me about. It's just like, no, it's not about the things that I can do for Him. It's simply just being with Him and resting in Him. And I was in a Bible study one day, and something just rose up in me because this girl was talking about how God will give you a husband or a spouse if you stay pure or if you don't masturbate or don't watch porn. I was so upset by that because I'm like, that's not true, because I know plenty of people who have gotten married and who have had those struggles in the past or still do have those
Yeah.
struggles. And I'm like, that's like not a good indicator for determining if you're qualified for marriage or if God's going to give you a spouse, because it has nothing to do with that. It's like He's a good gift giver. So it's like no matter what I do or how perfect my record is, at the end of the day, He's the gift giver. He's not the genie giver. It's a gift
Yeah.
from Him.
He's a gift. Yeah. Like Sinclair Ferguson, he has an analogy about how we view God as people. And I want to butcher it now that I think about it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I'm gonna give it a stab. Good old college try. Why not? He says this, that majority of people, when it comes to our sin, is that we see God as if like He's a father and we are a child who's done bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And this dad will take us, and God will take us to the toy store and say, "There's toys everywhere. You see all these toys. And you're like, oh, I want that. I want that. I want that. I want that."
Mm-hmm.
And God, this is the analogy. He says that like the father will look at the son and the kid and say, "If you behave, then I'll give you this stuff. So we're going to leave with nothing, and if you start becoming okay, become better, and become a good person, then I'll give you that stuff." And I think it's so true that that's how we see God.
Yeah.
Until we can come to terms with the fact that we see God as that kind of father,
Mm-hmm.
is that kind of parent, that He's kind of like that he's not a all loving good parent who's going to give you what the things that you need from just because He's good. But until we can see that we have a view of God that's distorted, it's
Yep.
been distorted by sin, and we think that He's only going to give us stuff because we're good and because we ain't masturbated, we ain't done whatever, we ain't slapped old people upside the head, whatever,
Literally.
like if I do this, then then yes, I think God owes me something. And the
Hmm.
truth of the matter is that no, like that's like once you realize that you do have that mindset, then God can start to do something with you.
Yes.
Then you can say, okay, Lord, I actually have been looking at you like I want something from you. I
Hmm.
want to use you, and yeah, it's and He can handle that if you come. He already know anyway. So just
Hmm.
come to but if you don't acknowledge that that's your mindset, then you'll miss all the good things God has for you.
Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking of this story. I remember when I was pretty new in my faith, I mean, my Bible was highlighted out. And I remember just highlighting, underlining, and those things are not wrong, but the
Yeah,
motive that I had was wrong because the best part was they're like, turn to like Romans 8, you open it up and like look at your
like I got
neighbors. And
that.
like,
Yes,
I'm like, I did that. The whole thing is highlighted with 10
yeah,
colors.
yeah,
But I just think it's like the motivation was wrong. So it's like my motivation can be, no, I want to highlight so I can know God's word. And that maybe that was my intent. But then when I
yeah,
really think back on those memories, I'm like, no, I felt good. I had a little
yeah,
good, like, I felt like I'm a good Christian.
yeah. And that's such a weird term, like I'm glad you said it. It's a weird term. What's a good Christian?
Right. Yeah.
That's not a real thing,
No.
that's made up by people. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that, and we can talk about that another day if you want to. But I think that there's a lot of stuff that we don't talk through. I talk about,
Hmm.
like even when I'm disappointed, like this is how you know that you have used God, or you try to pimp God out in some kind of way, is that you're mad at God.
Hey guys, this is Bianca, your host from the Altogether podcast. Thank you so much for joining today and listening to just a podcast with me and Darnell as we discuss all the messy parts of faith. I know. You wanted the podcast to keep going. I know. The episode was so good. So I decided to turn it into a part one and a part two. This episode, this second part, is just going to blow your mind as we talk about being angry with God, just dealing with disappointments, dealing with grief, and how to navigate that so you won't want to miss it. Next week, we are going to have a special guest. Her name is Sydney, and we're going to be talking about dreaming with God. And then the following week, we'll have the part two of this episode. And so, thank you so much for joining today. You are loved. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and on YouTube. And also, don't forget to leave a comment. I love to see great comments, and it just helps to boost my channel as well so that people can also be encouraged as they navigate the messy parts of life. Anyway, hopefully, you guys have a great rest of your day and stay tuned for next Tuesday. Love you.